So you're getting ready to pay for college. What should you be paying from? How much? Have you budgeted? Let's take a look. What's up, everybody? I'm Danny Sinowitz, the College Dude. When it comes to saving for college and paying for college, I believe that there are a couple sources that you should really hone in on. Everybody is unique and everybody is different in terms of how they want to pay for schooling. However, a lot of times people will think that they want to use retirement accounts or home equity to help pay for college. You can do that, and I'm not saying that it's wrong for everybody, but oftentimes we get lost in terms of goals. If your goal is to be debt free for your child, oftentimes by tacking on home equity, it's going to have some effect in terms of being able to pay that off long term. If you're also looking to retire by a certain age, tapping into a retirement account can be quite stressful. There could be tax implications to it, and you could be affecting market growth over the long term. It's best to keep those sources separate. If you're looking to go to college and you're trying to find the best ways to pay for college, I recommend 5 sources. The first source may seem obvious to many of you, and there's a reason why. Scholarships and grants are the first place that I recommend looking. Scholarships and grants in almost every single circumstance do not need to be repaid back. Oftentimes, scholarships and grants will be included in the financial aid award offer from the school that you're applying to. That's institutional aid that they're willing to give to you and to your student directly. However, you can also apply for outside scholarships and outside grants. Typically, it's recommended that you take a look at some of the sources in which you're able to tap into through your guidance counselor's office, through some online search engines. There are even some coaches out there who are able to work with parents and students one-on-one to be able to maximize the best way in which they can pay for schooling. Check out the link to Scholarships 101 with the College Dude, something that Dave, the scholarship coach, was able to walk us through and learn about some of the different ways in which you can apply for some of these outside scholarships. When it comes to receiving grant aid, usually what you can do is look through your state agencies to see if they offer some type of state grant. It's also worth seeing if there are other grants that could be offered through other organizations. While some people have been able to get a full ride, whether it be from outside scholarships or from a scholarship that's currently being offered through the school, it's very rare. It's not often that you can see somebody who can pay for 4 years of schooling just strictly through scholarships and grants. So what are the other sources that you should be looking at, and what should you be using? Number two, an immediate one that comes to mind, are tax credits. The most popular tax credit when it comes to saving for school is the American Opportunity Tax Credit. It's a credit that's offered through the IRS, and there are certain income requirements and other requirements that need to be met. There's a video that we are linking here as well that you'll be able to watch for a full breakdown of what the American Opportunity Tax Credit is, to have a better idea if you think that you'll be able to qualify. If you're no longer eligible for the American Opportunity Tax Credit, there's another great credit called the Lifetime Learning Credit. Oftentimes, this can apply to people who are in grad school or adult learners who are returning to pay for school. This is another great credit that you can take advantage of. It's not quite as appealing as the American Opportunity Tax Credit when it comes to some of the dollars that you're able to recoup come tax time the next year. But it's something that you do want to consider if you're giving thought to going back to school and either taking out loans or paying out of pocket. The third source that I recommend looking for are your savings. Really, if you can find a way to be saving in a tax deferred or tax favorable type of vehicle to help pay for college, it's definitely worth your time. The most common vehicle that we're all used to hearing about when it comes to saving for college is the 529 plan. And there is a reason why. It was specifically geared towards saving and paying for college. And for many states, you can get a state tax deduction or a state credit if you follow your state's rules in terms of contributing either to your own state's 529 plan or to a 529 plan in general. You want to make sure that you're familiar with your state tax rules and work with a qualified accountant or tax professional to make sure that it's going to make sense for you. However, at the federal level, that money is going to grow tax deferred, and better yet, if you use it for qualifying education expenses, you will be able to take that money out completely tax free. In terms of what some of those qualifying education expenses are specifically for a 529 plan, tuition and fees count. Room and board also counts, but you can't be taking out more than the allotted amount that the school puts in terms of their financial aid award letter. So if you're living off campus at a very, very ritzy, expensive apartment, you got to make sure that you stay within the bounds of what the school outlines is the reasonable amount for room and board. Same thing with meal plans. You can use those funds to help pay for groceries, but it needs to stay in bounds with what the school outlines as far as the full cost of their meal plan. The other source that you can look to use 529s for are books and equipment. By using 529 plans to help pay for some of these things, you're able to utilize savings that you have that you could have gotten a tax deduction for at the state level. And the funds are then going to grow tax free and be able to take it out tax free if you use them for qualifying education expenses. Disclaimer, if you don't use these for qualifying education expenses, there are some workarounds to make sure that you can either transfer these to a beneficiary, you can help pay off an existing student loan. There's even a recent provision in the Secure Act 2.0, which allows you to move $35,000 a lifetime from a 529 plan to a Roth IRA. There are some serious criteria to that, though, so you want to make sure, again, that you're working with a qualified tax professional to make sure that that makes sense for you. But if you don't use these for a qualifying education expense and aren't able to use it for some of the sources I just outlined, you are going to pay a 10% penalty on both the interest, and the interest is going to be taxable to you as income. So you want to make sure if you're using a 529 plan that you're not oversaving into it. That way you're able to still make sure that you're able to use those expenses for the intended purposes, which should be education. The next source of being able to pay for college should be through cash flow. This can either come from the student or from the parent when it comes to them saving and then paying for college. So for parents, you may be saving regularly into a 529 plan or some type of college savings plan. There's nothing wrong with continuing to do so and then utilizing that to pay for schooling while the student is still in college. You could also take some of the savings that you may be recognizing from perhaps some of the meals that they've been eating. If you're saving on groceries by having them go from home to the school, you could utilize some of that cash flow to help pay for schooling. Same thing, whether it be any other types of expenses that you're normally used to seeing that the child is racking up, you can try to save and earmark those funds to help pay for schooling through your cash flow. It's also a good idea that if the student has a job, that they give some consideration to using some of those funds to help pay for schooling. The way that colleges are going to assess some of the student savings and some of the student income is that they're going to say that the majority of those funds or the working that they're able to do, the cash flow that they're bringing in, should be considered for college. In terms of you being able to help lower some of that cost, it's never a bad idea to consider some of the cash flow that's available to you. Another source that can be a great way to save and pay for college is through a Section 127 plan. If you're not familiar with the Section 127 plan, it's a way that a student or an employee of a small business or a large business that has a plan in place can help pay for college completely tax-free. Again, you want to make sure that if the student is working, that there could be a Section 127 plan in place. That way, they're able to receive up to $5,250 completely tax-free to be able then to pay for schooling. Rather than it being received as income that would be taxable, that can be received by the student completely tax-free if it's used to go towards paying for education. The last source that I recommend to help pay for schooling, and oftentimes is going to be the case that parents are going to have to take out, are loans. Let's talk about student loans for a minute. You may be aware that if you complete the free application for federal student aid, that students are going to be eligible either for the subsidized or the unsubsidized direct loans. The amount that they're able to receive every year is in year one, it's $5,500, year two, $6,500, and then in years 3 and 4, it's $7,500. If a student is considered a dependent student and is currently under the care of their parents' financials are going to be assessed on the FAFSA, and they're eligible for those amounts each and every year as they get through schooling. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, though, with this is that this loan does come directly from the Department of Education, but it's also just in the student's name. It's a great way for them to be able to build credit and a way for them to learn how to manage a student loan repayment. Some Some benefits of this plan is that the interest would be fixed. It's not going to be a variable rate. So if we're in a rising interest rate environment, you wouldn't notice that those are going to be creeping up constantly. They'll stay fixed regardless of what the interest rate is doing and what the Fed decides to do in Washington. The other benefit of this is that you can usually enter into a very favorable repayment term. You may have just heard recently of the Department of Education just announced a new SAVE program, the SAVE program. This new SAVE program allows for a very flexible repayment and something that most borrowers will be able to afford no problem when they come out of school. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is there are two other types of loans that are out there. We've talked previously about Parent Plus loans, and they have their benefits to them. There are also private loans that are going to be available to both parents as the full owner, or for parents as the co-signer and the student as the primary borrower on those loans. If you're going to go the route of private loans or Parent Plus loans, it's very, very beneficial to make sure that you know what that repayment will be on the other end. It's also worth making sure that you utilize some of these online calculators that are out there to know what it is that either you or your student will be repaying. I know I mentioned it briefly before, but 401k plans, Roth IRAs, home equity, oftentimes people say that they're going to use those to help pay for college. I'm not saying it doesn't work in any circumstance, but I am saying that if those interfere with other goals between you, your spouse, and the rest of your family, you should be giving serious consideration to just utilizing the 5 sources that I outlined to pay for college. As always, this information is meant to be educational in nature and is not meant to be taken as specific recommended advice. If you have specific questions, make sure to run anything that you have by your CPA, tax professional, financial professional, or tax attorney. As always, if you found this content to be helpful, please feel free to like this, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with others that you think could be using this information. Thank you for your time. Until next time.